Bostonians are surrounded by hundreds of years worth of hidden gems. Explore the JFK Library, the Christian Science Plaza, and a view from 500 feet in the air. All that and more in Undiscovered Boston on WEBJ News.
Welcome to a special edition broadcast of WEBJ News. I'm Aster Cheng.
And I'm Alex Haskell, and tonight in this special broadcast, we will be taking you to the most unique, hidden, and undiscovered locations within the Boston area.
Boston, founded in 1630 with countless locations that played a role in our nation's history.
In a city where there is so much all around you, it's easy to forget that you could be walking past something that played a critical role in our nation and city's history.
Out of the countless hidden gems that exist all around us, tonight we will be showcasing 7 of these locations.
Each of these locations are Gather, a restaurant in the Seaport District, the Custom House Clock Tower in the heart of the Financial District,
the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library in Dorchester, Back Bay's Christian Science Plaza,
Cambridge's Harvard Semitic Museum, hidden within one of the world's most prestigious universities, the West End's own Otis House Museum,
and the Grand Lodge of Masons of Massachusetts in Boston's Theater and Chinatown districts, just steps away from our studio. Now on to our first location. Gather is a restaurant in the heart of Boston's Seaport District. It is a place where people can come together to enjoy a delicious meal crafted by its passionate head chef. Carly Dion has more. Carly?
Patricio Morales has cooked at restaurants all over the world before working his way up to head chef at Gather. The location of this restaurant is within District Hall, where all people are welcome to use areas within this building to come together for meetings. Check it out.
Coming around, head stuff.
Head chef Patricio Morales' career began in Chile, his native country. As an immigrant, he traveled throughout parts of Europe and the United States, inspiring his passion for all cuisines. While Gather brings people together, his meals bring cultures together.
Nowadays, almost everybody's using new American cuisine, but the American cuisine is being influenced by so many countries, so many ethnicities. So many people come to this great country just to make a better living. So each one of them has bring their own, costumes, tradition. So Gather is probably more of an international cuisine. I have right now in the menu, we have a jambalaya, which is from Asia. It's been influenced by French cuisine too. I'm gonna change that to a gumbo, which is also French cuisine influenced by Louisiana. So I want to say that I try to bring food from all over the world.
The location of this restaurant is within District Hall, where people can also use desk and lounge spaces throughout the building for meetings, free of charge.
Especially because you have Cambridge, MIT, great universities in Massachusetts and in Boston, where people come over here and they can just get together without having to book or spend money. Sometimes the best ideas can't afford at the beginning to have a private dining room, but over here is always welcome, so they can always get together back here and maybe remember when they didn't have enough money, and being in a free place like this, it was the beginning of something great.
And although the Seaport is the most recent renovated area of Boston, Chef Morales sees it as a gateway to get tourists interested in exploring more of the history Boston has to offer.
This is just probably the beginning, and the view, the memory, the nice monument that they have is probably just what is going to open the interest of the tourists to eventually go more into the city.
So if you're looking for a delicious meal, come grab a bite to eat at Gather and then explore all of the recent history Boston's Seaport has to offer. In Boston, I'm Carly Dion, WEBJ News.
The Financial District is filled with hundreds of years of Boston's history. Moses Small visited the area to learn about an old landmark with a new purpose.
Some Boston landmarks are hiding in plain sight. I took a trip to the Custom House to learn about a piece of history that you can visit. If you want to find a landmark hiding in plain sight, just look up. The Custom House Clock Tower is a historic building dating back to the 1800s. It started out as the timepiece of the city, but now it's part of a Marriott hotel. Evan Lang works in the financial district. He says the landmark brightens up his trip to work every day.
I do like the fact that we can kind of interact with history, so it's a way that the Boston residents and transient people can come and be part of something that was such a historic Boston landmarks.
The city completed the main building in 1847 and added the tower in 1913. When traders brought goods into the Boston harbor, workers stored everything at the custom house. The top of the tower reaches almost 500 feet in the air. That makes it one of the city's tallest buildings and one of its first skyscrapers. Ken Estridge says he's glad that the city is preserving the history of the custom house.
I'm not from Boston, but I've lived here a long time, and I've always loved that building. It's really one of the nicest buildings in the city. Yeah. And I was surprised to see what it was like on the inside. There's some very interesting stuff inside the building. I think it's very cool that they turned it into a place that people can stay.
The Custom House went through renovations in the 90s. It's a far cry from the building Andrew Jackson authorized 184 years ago. Now, it has an observation deck, and you can find a scale model of the tower in the lobby. The Custom House won't be taking any shipments anytime soon, but now it's a part of the fabric of the city.
It's something that doesn't necessarily fit into Boston skyline, which I think is a nice kind of unique facet of that horizon picture when you can see the Boston Harbor Hotel and the Custom House. It's a very unique building with unique architecture, so it's something that everybody can just quickly recognize when they look at Boston.
Right now I'm standing on top of one of Boston's tallest buildings. This used to be the timepiece for the financial district, and now it's a hidden gem. For WEBJ News, I'm Moses Small.
Coming up, a look at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library by Undiscovered Boston's very own Alex Haskell.
I'm Maya Huter, and I'm here at the First Church of Christ Scientists. Coming up, we'll take a look at the history of this worldwide headquarters and its plans for revitalization.
Welcome back to Undiscovered Boston. It's hard not to be drawn to the Camelot era of President Kennedy, a time where the United States drastically expanded its space program and engaged in a nuclear arms race with the Soviet Union. It was also when the civil rights movement made some of its most important progress. I visited the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston, where President Kennedy's legacy remains alive and his efforts to strengthen America can be viewed. Built on the land picked out by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis herself, the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum overlooks the ocean JFK loved in the city that brought him to power.
Presidential libraries were established to not only keep the record of a certain president and the administration, but educate the public about the life and times in which that administration occurred. And by holding the records and making them available, usually to researchers, it allows people to, over time, examine and truly understand the work of a particular president.
Director of the library, Alan Price, has been running the institution since November of 2018. He works to make sure all the pieces of the museum runs well.
As a representative of the National Archives and Records Administration, I try to advance the mission of making sure that we use these archives to hold our government accountable, to educate citizens, and do our bit to strengthen democracy.
The library and museum takes visitors from the time of Kennedy's youth to the campaign and to his time as president.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
One of the interesting artifacts visitors can see here is the coconut Kennedy carved a message in while stranded in the Solomon Islands while he was a lieutenant in World War II. One of Kennedy's successful accomplishments highlighted by the museum and library is the civil rights movement.
It was a quick study and really was able to articulate and embody the message. The constitutional promise must be available to all people. and how unjust and unfair and unconscionable it would be that certain people, based on the color of their skin, would not enjoy full protection and rights under the Constitution.
When making your way through the replica of the White House during Kennedy's time in office, you can't help but wonder how have the presidents after Kennedy helped keep his legacy alive.
I think we made progress. I think that in his own words, that the work of his administration would take a lot longer than 100 days. It would perhaps take all of our lifetimes. So he began.
The JFK Library is open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. For WEBJ News, I'm Alex Haskell.
The First Church of Christ Scientists is the worldwide headquarters for Christian Science.
To learn about the fascinating history, we go to our reporter, Maya Huter, who is just down the street from the headquarters. Maya?
Thank you, Alex and Aster. A prominent feature on Mass Ave, the First Church of Christ Scientist is a part of Boston's history.
Mary Baker Eddy had only 15 followers when she began practicing Christian Science. Now, the religion has more than 1,400 churches in 70 countries. Christian Science believes and practices that health and Christ are intertwined and that prayer is the most effective form of healing. This came to be after Mary Baker Eddy believed to have cured herself of a serious illness through prayer alone.
Really, during the whole first half of her life, the major issue for her was finding a way to get healthy. And also, she was taught to read using the Bible. She came from an old New England congregational family. She learned to read using the Bible, and the Bible was basically the bedrock for her whole life. But in addition to wanting to become more healthy, she also wanted to understand how Jesus healed. That was really the quest for her through the whole first half of her life.
The church sits on the Christian Science Plaza, which is also home to the Mary Baker Eddy Library, the Maparium, and a large reflecting pool open to the public. The church consists of an original Romanesque church built in 1894 and a Byzantine Renaissance extension which was completed in 1906. The extension was created to provide more seating to the church's growing population and now seats 5,000 people.
It wasn't until late 1894 that they had the resources to build their first church home here in this building. It holds about 800 people, which seemed like enough for this young religious movement, but within 10 years they totally outgrew it. They realized they needed a much bigger space. They managed to buy the land next door, and the big extension was built there in just 2 years.
Services are held in the extension on Wednesdays and Sundays. The extension is home to the 9th largest organ in the world, standing at 32 feet tall and featuring 13,000 pipes.
The church maintains much of its history through its original edifice dating back to 1894, but is currently undergoing a massive revitalization project.
The revitalization plans to preserve the church's original design while making the complex more environmentally friendly.
They've completely rebuilt the reflecting pool, in part because it was leaking, but also because it was wasting a lot of water, and it was designed originally to be filled with water year-round, but they found that that wouldn't work in the windiest city in America during the winter months. The spray would blow out onto the pavement, and so the plaza has been drained for 5 or 6 months each year, and now they've made it shallower so it uses less water, and it's lined with polished granite, which is so highly reflective that you can see a reflection on the surface all through the winter months, even when there's no water there.
The Christian Science Plaza's primary purpose is to hold services for followers of Christian Science, but hopes members of the public will come and enjoy its history and expanding features.
For WEBJ News in Boston, I'm Maya Huter.
The Christian Science Plaza offers tours of their mother church and original church every day of the week. Coming up, a look inside of a small museum hidden within Harvard University. Aster will give us a tour of what is there.
Coming up next, we'll take a look inside the first Otis house in Boston's West End neighborhood.
Welcome back. Hidden in Cambridge, the Harvard Semitic Museum contains over 40,000 artifacts of the Near East. I went to the museum to see how it is bringing centuries-old artifacts to life.
You can't go back in time, but one museum is trying.
The Harvard Semitic Museum is bringing the history and culture of Semitic languages to life, with innovative technology to blend the artifacts of the past with the present. This is seen in the museum's Dream Stela, which is a full-size replica of the hieroglyphic text that was once set up in front of the Sphinx. Using augmented reality, museum visitors can download an app which translates the text and puts the user directly in Giza where the Dream Stela sits. Museum director Peter Manuelian demonstrates.
Almost as if the stela is the QR code here. And we've got two buttons, the two orange buttons down below. If I push the lower right-hand button, I can now read hieroglyphs. So you can actually go to Giza without buying a plane ticket. So you hit the lower left button here, and now you're standing right between the front legs of the Sphinx.
The augmented reality app can also take museum goers back to the time of Pharaoh Thutmose IV and even further back to the Pyramid Age.
I can now go back to 1400 BC to the New Kingdom and see how the Sphinx might have looked.
The museum has begun to use 3D printing and scanning to expand the displays in their gallery and recreate full-size replicas as part of their teaching efforts.
We've now got full-size 3D printed replica of this particular Shoabti or Ushabti, and we can do it in different colors and at different sizes. So this allows us to teach with objects in our Egyptology classes in a way that we can't do without opening the case and taking this out and having secure locations.
The process for creating the replicas and the augmented reality features is extensive. The replica figures take 23 hours to print, and there are years of work behind the augmented reality features.
So first you need the scholars to figure out what's the content, what story are we trying to tell, what do we want to relate. Then the technologists, the computer graphics people, the animators, what can we do within our budget and within our time frame. And then you need curatorial expertise and educational expertise. What story can we impart in the time that the visitor is here, and how do we make it clear? What about the technological challenges,
Future additions to the museum's galleries include expanding augmented reality to the Ancient Mesopotamia Gallery and the Ancient Israelite Home Model. The museum is free to all and is open from 11 to 4 every day except Saturday.
Wow, Aster, we'll have to make it over there after those additions are added.
Definitely. They're expanding the augmented reality to the 3rd floor, which has silicone casts of the Mesopotamian stone walls. We have to be sure to check it out.
Yeah, well, all right, but not before we go check out the Otis house.
You have probably walked by the Otis house on Cambridge Street in West End and not known its National Historic Landmark.
Prominent architect Charles Bulfinch designed it for Harrison Gray Otis in 1796.
Otis was a lawyer, served in Congress, and was the mayor of Boston. The house is now a museum that uncovers the history of Boston's West End streets.
Thanks, Alex and Aster. The Otis House on Cambridge Street is filled with memories from the 17th century, but what a lot of people around the city don't know is how much this house has been a part of Boston's history.
Charles Bulfinch was a close friend of the Otises and designed the Massachusetts State House, but was best known for creating federal style of architecture. As a tour guide, Kate Carver gives visitors a look into the sophisticated past of this mansion and its place in Boston history.
It's not incredibly visible from the street sometimes, but I think on a deeper level, the most important thing about the house is probably that it represents a really unique period in Boston's history, the federal era, and a time period that's often overlooked since Boston's revolutionary history is so splashy and hugely writ large on American history. So I think it's a very interesting example of something that's often overlooked but no less important.
Next to the Old West Church, the mansion represents federal-style architecture with spaces like the parlor and office.
Kind of a hidden gem, something right in their backyard that they've never actually seen.
Made up of unique designs in bold colors, the most famous room is the dining room, where the wealthy guests were entertained at the time.
It has a great story of restoration, right? They use paintings and so forth to be able to figure out what colors the room might have been, so there's a lot to talk about in there.
My favorite part of the house to show visitors is probably Sally's bedroom, because we get to talk a lot more in there about like the life of the family and Harry and Sally's love story, which of course is very sweet.
A white staircase leads to a hallway with historical paintings and a modern view of Beacon Hill. Filled with flowered wallpaper and yellow sheets, Sally's room is one that proves how chic the married couple's lifestyle truly was. They had a total of 11 kids together. Across is a drawing room that holds historical furniture like a gold chandelier, a harp, a piano, and elegant silverware.
Otis. The Otises only lived here for 4 years, so the house had hundreds of years of history that went through boarding house history, went through the Civil War, went through all kinds of stuff, the destruction of the West End in Boston. So it was really kind of a neat history of Boston beyond just the original story of the Otises.
A mirror door connects to a black stair hall and leads to Otis's room, covered in colorful patterns. At the foot of the bed, an ancient shower is still placed. The museum site manager, Michael Mailer, encourages more local families to stop by.
I think they'd be surprised that there's something relatable here for everybody, right? Everybody thinks, oh, old house history, how does that relate to me today? But the stories that we tell here are very relatable to what's going on in everyone's lives today.
The tour ends with a brick wall from an 18th century oven that was once demolished for renovations. The kitchen is now used to teach school groups touring how to use plaster. The museum also stores documents and photographs from the historic New England Library and Archives. Tours are offered weekly from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for visitors to explore this Federal-era masterpiece. For WEBJ News, I'm Victoria Gonzalez.
Thank you for the great reporting, Victoria.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to be sure to check it out. We'll be right back with more discoveries.
Coming up next, the history of a fraternity that dates back to 1733.
You may walk by this building every morning on your way to work, but what you may not know is that it has been a part of Boston's landscape for hundreds of years.
Thanks, Alex. It's a place most people never go, but the Masons are always welcoming new guests. Built in 1733, the Grand Lodge of Masons has built relationships that carry from generation to generation. Walter Hunt, the Grand Historian and the librarian of the Lodge, displayed the oldest book in the Lodge.
And this was printed in Venice in 1576, so it's 440 years old. But let me show you something also cool. This is John Paul Jones's letter book. These are copies of letters that he wrote. Now what he probably did was write them here and then copy them, fair copy them to pieces of paper that he would send. So this is a letter he wrote to a Russian admiral, because he was also an admiral in the Russian Navy. Yeah, we're fairly well intertwined with the history of Boston.
It is the world's oldest and largest fraternity. As a fraternity, they are a group of men who aim to help the community while building relationships with their family, faith, country, and fraternity.
I think in actual fact, it was a group of good-hearted people that enjoyed each other's company, and it started in London in 1717. They organized as a Grand Lodge. Massachusetts is the third oldest Grand Lodge in the world and the oldest in the Western Hemisphere.
The Grand Master said that his favorite part of being a Mason is helping the members of the Lodge in times of need and helping children in the community. Every year, the Lodge provides clothes, shoes, and school supplies for local children in Boston.
We have what's called a Brotherhood Fund, and our principal charity is our own members. Their task is to interface with middle school principals and nurses. Sometimes we go to elementary schools, but we focus on middle schools. And the nurses and principals are the people that could see kids that need help, but we know we're helping kids.
Robert Huke, the Communications and Development Director, has been a Grand Mason for 19 years.
So in every lodge room in Massachusetts, we have what we call the rough and perfect ashlars. They're obviously stones. So we have the rough ashlar, which would be unsuitable in the use of construction, but in the hands of a craftsman who can make it true, square, and level. You can build a wall, you can build a cathedral. And that's symbolic of what Freemasonry represents. It's that journey or that evolution from the imperfect to the perfect.
This longtime fraternity looks to serve the community for many years to come. Reporting in Boston for WEBJ News, I'm Sam Knox.
Thank you for watching this special edition broadcast of WEBJ News. I'm Aster Cheng.
And I'm Alex Haskell. We hope you'll take the time to see these discoveries for yourself. Have a good night.